Hi there, this is David Wilcock, and you're listening to another Divine Cosmos audio blog exclusive interview with Benjamin Fulford. Fulford has worked for Forbes magazine as the editor for the Asia Pacific region. Now, people have tried to attack his credibility on this before, but it is documented. I've checked the references myself. He was mentioned by Stephen Colbert in one show discussing the so-called Illuminati. And I will also say that Fulford has contact with an incredible number of different sources. He does seem to back up who these sources are as much as humanly possible. And recently, these sources informed him that the earthquakes that occurred in Colorado and then in Washington, D.C. area surrounding August 22nd and 23rd were in fact apparently nuclear strikes against underground military facilities that have been built by the U.S. government ostensibly since the early 1960s at the cost of trillions of dollars of undocumented taxpayer money that is going into these black projects. Now, the reason why I contacted Benjamin Fulford is that I had read this on his blog, and then I started to contact my own sources, which have been built up over being a public figure on the internet since 1999, and gaining the trust of many people in various classified programs. And I was absolutely astonished when I started to ask around and found out that everyone I know, with one exception, who probably wasn't on a need-to-know basis, confirmed that this attack did happen. Now again, I'm going to turn it over to Ben in just a second, but one more setup thing I want to say here is, if you haven't understood the gravity or the implications of what I'm telling you right now, it's important to point out that these guys never imagined that these underground facilities could ever have been attacked. So what has happened here is a seismic shift in this insider war that is arguably as significant as the nuking of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in World War II. And in fact, it may very well be the workings of the universe in terms of karma that the people responsible for those attacks have now had it happen to them. There's undeniable significance in this happening. I was astonished at the depth of detail that I've been able to get from my own sources about what happened. I've been told that the situation is now considered code red. However, it's also being withheld from most of the people in these programs. It's on a need-to-know basis, and even the sources I'm in contact with, all except for one, did not even have the need-to-know basis high enough to know why this had happened, or who was responsible for it. So the only thing that we know is that the powers that were, as I like to call them, have been putting out stories on the internet about this event. And what they're actually doing is they're trying to mine for information. They want to find out who knows what. And I am astonished that my own sources lack the knowledge that Benjamin Fulford has been putting out as to who is responsible for this and why it is responsible. But my intelligence suggests that it's possible that as many as 30,000 people were in each of these two underground cities at the time that it went off. So we're talking about the potential of 60,000 deaths. And we're also talking about the potential that anyone else working for these programs who is in one of these facilities, which could either be underground or possibly off-world, such as in a space station or on the moon or elsewhere, they are now totally alone and unguarded. They are not going to be protected. They are not safe. And their superiors are not informing them of the risk that they now are in by being in those locations. I want to set the record straight. I want to get the man to talk to you, the public, and hear firsthand what the hell is going on, who did this, why did they do this, and what are the implications. So Ben, that's my intro. Let's hear from you now. I'm very interested in this.
Look, there's been a very esoteric battle over control of the dollar printing machine, okay, or the global financial system. What happened was that at the end of World War II, or during the Bretton Woods Accords of 1944, Britain, France, and the U.S. were given the right to control the world's currency. And they were supposed to have a Marshall Plan to develop Africa and Asia as well as Europe. But when they reneged on their promise, the group and instead started the fake Cold War with the Soviet Union, which was designed to support the military industries, the group of non-aligned nations, 77 nations, pooled their assets, all their wealth, their gold and other valuables, and set up some global collateral accounts. And they wanted to use this money to start the Marshall Plans for Asia and Africa. And President Kennedy agreed to go along with this after he found out that there was a group that was trying to very seriously get the Soviet Union and the United States to annihilate each other. This was the Cuban Missile Crisis. So there had some, and the historical accord is called the Hilton Green Memorial. Okay, this is available to any serious researcher in financial history. And President Sukarno was the signatory for the countries. And he was going to give Kennedy, they gave Kennedy 140,000 tons of gold, and he passed a law allowing Congress, not the Federal Reserve Board, to create dollars. And Kennedy also said, let's go to the moon instead of this Cold War, you know, to stimulate industry. So he was saying, yeah, let's develop the poor countries and let's develop space instead of having this fake Cold War. And Kennedy did put out a lot of money, but he was assassinated. And as you know, the public space program just disappeared in the 1970s when that funding ran out and just stopped completely. President Sukarno was hounded from office. Now, the international agreement that left Britain, France, and the United States in charge of the world's financial system expired in 1994. That is why they wound down the Soviet Union. And after 1994, there was no accord at the very top level of the world's financial system about who would be in charge next. There was a split in the ranks. And the Chinese and the non-aligned nations were pressuring the oligarchs who were running things, who had been running things since World War II, to hand over control of the dollar printing press, the financial system, and they were reluctant. The International Court of Justice in The Hague was sued by the Chinese over gold that the Federal Reserve Board owners owed them. And the Federal Reserve Board owners lost this lawsuit, and they were told to hand over the gold starting on September 12th, 2001. And instead, on September 11th, 2001, as you all know, they gave the world a finger, and instead they marched on, they started this huge fake global war on terror, which was part of an attempt by the fascist groups from World War II. This was the Nazis and their fascist sympathizers in the U.S. and England and Italy, with a group that's, you know, can be found within the military, in Congress, and in the Vatican. We're going to set up a global fascist government. And at the same time, they had this belief that there were too many people, especially too many, according to them, inferior brown-type people, and they wanted to reduce the world's population by 90%. And they were going to do it. Yeah, but I mean, it's very well documented. I was invited to join this group by Heizo Takanaka, who was the Japanese finance minister for 5 years. And I have a tape recording of this invitation to prove it. And they were planning to hide in these underground bases after they set off a nuclear holocaust. The original plan was to start a nuclear war between Iran and Israel, use that as an excuse to set up martial law in the G7 countries, and then prepare for war against China. This fell apart when Russia kicked them out, and Putin reasserted independence for Russia. That removed their control of the oil industry and made that whole plan not work. And the Chinese also stopped buying U.S. treasuries for a while. to put pressure on this group. So they switched strategies, and instead they tried to suck up to China and offer them, a world dictatorship in partnership with this group. That's why in public you saw Obama visit China in 2009 and offer a G2. This is how you can confirm this. But in any case, this group that carried out the 9/11 attacks has been under increasing pressure and under isolation at the very highest levels, and they're running out of money. They're being cut off.
Well, now, Ben, when right before September 11th, a lot of people forgot about this, that Donald Rumsfeld goes on national television and says that they lost $2.3 trillion from the Pentagon over the previous decade. Does that have anything to do with this gold thing you were talking about?
Oh, yeah. No, that money was used to finance Blackwater and a private army not controlled by the Pentagon, because the Pentagon would not let themselves be controlled by this cabal. And so they were trying to do, like the Nazis did in World War II, create an elite SS Corps that could bully the regular military. So that was where that money went to, as far as my sources are concerned.
Wow.
In any case, we were contacted by smugglers, drug smugglers.
Could you just say who we is for a minute?
We is a group of us who are involved in the fight to overthrow this cabal. It includes members of the CIA, the Pentagon, the agencies, and various, including Asian secret societies. We use the name White Dragon. Another group, they call themselves the White Hats, but we all have the same goal, which is to get this insane group of people out of power. Some of the criticism that I've seen from people on the internet is, well, if this group is so vast and so powerful to fight this cabal, why is Benjamin Fulford the only one talking about this? Well, it's these people like their secrecy, and I'm a spokesperson. It's like when you go to the White House, there's only one voice that they give to the public.
Right.
It's just, they prefer to work behind the scenes, because you got to realize we're dealing in a world where this assassination is like they use assassination like most of us use tissue papers.
Sure.
I've had about 6 murder attempts myself. One of my colleagues, a CIA guy, was recently poisoned with ricin by these guys. Another one of our members in Switzerland, they found, he's got guards around his house. They just shot someone last week near his house who was trying to kill him. Before that, they found a mafioso by the name of Vincenzo Mazzamaro who had a gun and a sophisticated lock-picking device who was trying to get into his place. Another one of us had a concrete bag miss him by a couple of inches last week.
Wow.
These people, we're dealing with some very dangerous people, and that's why there's a need for secrecy.
I've also speculated that since you are in Japan and you're a gaijin, you're a foreigner, a white person, and you have the background of being a distinguished editor for Forbes magazine, that the fact that you are bilingual, you do speak fluent Japanese, there's plenty of videos you've done now that show that, might have been part of what gave you this platform to give these Asian secret societies a voice. Would you say that's correct?
Well, what happened in my case was that I asked a very simple and obvious question when I was at Forbes. The Japanese people, that includes both public and private sector, have about $8 trillion worth of assets overseas.
$8 trillion?
Yeah, that's in the public record. You can go to the Finance Ministry homepage, and the numbers are there. According to the UN Development Report, you need $400 billion to stop environmental destruction and $200 billion to end poverty. So I'm saying, hey, you guys, why don't you end poverty, stop environmental destruction?
Okay, hold on.
It's a no-brainer.
$400 billion is all it takes to completely stop environmental destruction? How's that possible?
That's an annual budget, okay? This is the UN Development Report. You'd have to go to their experts to find out how they did those numbers.